it's a really nice picture of your floor.
Yes, I know. I thought that when I picked it. However, it's supposed to be a little less busy than my life. So I put it up. I have some others that I will try out. This one seemed a little less, you know, uh, what is it, hopeful in that, I was at the beach on one and I was in the woods in another. So this one was a little bit less. So this was sort of great. Today's a really busy day because tomorrow I have an hour-long continuing legal education program that I'm giving for the New York State Bar Association on using alternative dispute resolution in conflicts over animals, but also doing that remotely, which is what we're faced with now with COVID. So I'm very excited about getting the opportunity to help my colleagues learn how to do what I've been doing since about 2010, 2011, because I first started on Skype, and then I moved to Zoom, creating this practice where I help people resolve conflicts. It's been a huge push. Before I forget, Diane, we're going to send you the link. I'm sorry we couldn't get it to you last week. Both Rose and I lost internet due to weather last week, so we couldn't get you the link. But the MAP program, the weekend program, is going to be 2 hours on a Friday and 2 hours on a Saturday, the 24th and 25th from 11 to 1. We're hoping people can come if they're at work. And we're going to cover on Saturday, a little bit of what we did on Sunday, but then also be able to make sure we cover everyone getting all the templates, and being able to, in 2 days, create a MAP program that they can then bring, hopefully, to their trust and estate attorney, because it's important to incorporate it. There have been so many people I've spoken to recently. One person I spoke to recently, hi Heike, how are you? Nice to see you. One person I spoke to recently said, well, isn't that what rescues are for? They're to take my dog if, nobody can take my dog. And I said, well, absolutely. I mean, that's God bless rescues. That's really, they help out in those situations, both now during COVID and before, when people passed away without any sort of recommendation. So it's 12 o'clock. So I'm Deborah Hamilton, and you're here at the MAP program. It's a community that talks about how to make a plan for your pet. It was before COVID, and now it's so important with COVID, because we really can't say we're post-COVID, because we are certainly, especially you, Diane, and Arizona, you are not post-COVID. You are sort of in the thick of it. So let me check in with everybody. Diane, how's everything going?
As you say, we are in the thick of it. It's ugly. It's hot. It's contagious. The weather is stinking hot. Not too much one can do outside right now, unfortunately. About the only thing to do is dock diving. It's too hot to train agility, obedience, anything else, really.
And it's scary. It's scary being there, because, you just really have to be very conscious of social distancing, of wearing your masks, of, cleaning your hands a lot.
It's scary being here, and it's very interesting to me to learn what a bunch of immature, selfish people live in Arizona. Because
that doesn't stop with age, right? It's not young people or old people.
It doesn't discriminate, age, color, race. It doesn't sex, doesn't discriminate. People are just very spoiled and selfish out here. And I don't know how I mean, in New York, I think when you had all this, you were in so much of a crisis that everybody pulled together.
We sort of had the cork pulled, and we're like, holy Toledo. And Governor Cuomo was very holy Toledo. So I think that we lived through the most frightening part, because nobody knew anything. And now I think people think they know things. And so.
Well, and now people are politicizing things that have nothing to with political things.
Right, right.
Science and politics don't go hand in hand. Believe me, they don't.
Yeah.
And because I do work in the medical field, I have so many friends that are seeing the stress of this, and I get 4 and 5 text emails a day begging me to go back into the hospitals, which unfortunately I just cannot risk the exposure of doing.
Right.
But it also makes me feel very badly for the healthcare workers, as well as I feel a little guilty, quite honestly.
Right.
You spend your whole life to help people in doing this, and now I'm sitting home, and it's a very strange feeling to me. But how so many people can be ignoring statistics and science is beyond me. I mean, I'm flabbergasted.
I know, and with respect to their pets, they probably don't even know about making a plan for their pets. I know here in New York, when it first broke out, I spent a great deal of time, as both of you know, Sally and Diane, and I'm going to share with Heike. In a minute, I think I'm pronouncing your name right. Am I?
It's Heike.
Heike, great. So at the beginning of this COVID, this is a group who's been together since the end of March, and people come and go as they can, depending on their schedule. But we talked about getting in touch with your neighbor, because the MAP plan never considered the distance of the person who's going to care for your pet as an issue, because of course they were going to come from Connecticut and get my dogs. However, it wasn't going to happen during the high point of COVID, because then they'd have to stay in quarantine for 14 days. So we talked about making sure that you spoke to your neighbors who had dogs. And the way you do that is, can you take care of my dogs if I get sick? No, that's not the way to do it. The way to do it is to say, if you have an issue, if anything happens in your family, I'm right up the street. This is my name, my address, my telephone number. Call me and leave me some directions to care for your pet. And if I can, you have my name and number, can I get yours, so that if God forbid anything happens, we can reciprocate. And I can tell you from my own experience that in fact, everyone took my name and number and gave me their name and number in the event anything happened to us, because here in New York, because it hit so hard, it was a very frightening event. But not many people are thinking about that. And yet every day we see animals going to the SPCA because the person went in for a checkup thinking they might have had COVID, and maybe are admitted and have made no plans. So before I get to you, Heike, I'm going to ask Sally how things are going with she and Athena.
Things are going great with Athena. We go for shorter walks late at night, early in the morning, sort of on Arizona schedule, but not quite that extreme. Too hot and humid for an older dog.
Oh, I know. I'm going early in the morning. The young dog I have is not so affected, although his tongue gets in the way of sniffing because it's dragging the ground.
Yes.
But the older girl definitely makes the choice for us. Are we taking the long walk or the short walk? And she bears to the left and goes, no, we're going home now. Heike, let's introduce you. I'm so glad you're here. It's been a long time, and I'm so glad you came. Tell me, how have you been doing? How are your pets doing? And have you been affected by the COVID?
So I'm doing well, and my dog and my horse are doing well also. I have not been affected by COVID personally. I live out in the country in a smaller town outside of DC, Northern Virginia. And it's going well. We all are pulling together, and everybody's wearing face masks. Nobody's being immature here. Everybody's being very mature about it. And just following guidelines, as they can. And the reason why I actually finally came on to your Zoom call, I've been getting your emails, luckily. Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
But I've been thinking about it for a while because I do now have a dog, and I've had him for 2 years now. He's a rescue from Kuwait. And I also I'm down to one horse, and we've moved around to between 3 different boarding facilities now in the last 2 years. And where we are right now, I love it. We love it. The atmosphere is really nice. So we're going to be staying there, knock on wood, for a while. But I'm going back to school starting in September to continue my homeopathic education. And I know I'm going to get really busy. So I wanted to get the will and, you know, the pets out of the way. I just wanted that to be off my plate. It's been on my list and it's been down on the bottom of the list for so long. And I've been thinking about it a lot lately. So it's moved to the top of the list. And then I got your email and I'm like, okay, I just have to do this now.
Yeah, the angels always have me. So, Heike, you're a vet, right? And you are going for holistic as well, which we love because this group is a big holistic group as well as a traditional medicine group.
Right. So the only thing that I actually do in veterinary medicine anymore is chiropractic work on animals. And hoping to add homeopathy to that. I'm just finishing
Where
my
are you?
advanced. I'm
She's
in Virginia.
Unfortunately. Diane's in Arizona and Sally's in Connecticut. So it's sort of like we've had people from the UK everywhere. So I'm so glad you're here, and it is so important to make this plan. And so what we talk about today is usually we check in with everyone, and then I give you some tidbits from recent things that have occurred. And it must have been prophetic that you're here because today, although Sally and Diane don't have horses, I thought they would be kind enough to let me talk about a text I received from my sister the other day, and it had this picture, which you may be able to see, I'm not sure. Let's see, can you see this picture? No, you really can't.
Yeah, the horses in the airplane, yeah.
Yeah, so they're headed for Japan from Canada or Mexico. And my sister said, do you know about this? And I said, yes, I do. I do work with people who try to rescue these horses. And it's my mission to talk to all of these people who are in a barn like yours, Heike, to make a plan for the care of their pets. So today, on top of everything else, I got this article from Equus, which is entitled, When Horse Theft is Not a Crime. And this can happen with dogs too. So it's not just horses, but it's dogs. If you leave your dog with a friend, your horse with a barn, and this woman went across to Colorado. She left her horse with a friend. Nothing in writing, because nobody ever puts anything in writing. It is my mantra, but no one ever puts anything in writing. And when she went to get her horses, the woman had sold them because she had possession of them. And under the law, if you give someone your horses to care for and you have no other indicia that you're coming back or anything else, they can sell them. And then it's a civil litigation piece, which costs a lot of money, and it's really craziness personified. So you really want to have something in writing, and I'm sure you do, Heike, with the barn that says, these are Heike's horses. They're here being boarded for $200 a week or a month or a year. In Virginia, it's probably much more, but we'll just say that for argument's sake. And that they belong to Heike and cannot be removed from the barn without written permission of Heike. This way you make sure that that stays the way it is. But this woman had no idea that if she left her horses in that barn without something more, that the woman would be able to sell them. And now she's trying to find them. And it's not that people intend to be devious or terrible. They don't go into, of course, and I'm a mediator, so I'm always both sides of the realm. They don't go into why the woman sold the horses. There might have been some misunderstanding, some miscommunication. Maybe she was nefarious, who knows? But what? So she might have been nefarious, but you really have to make sure you take care of your horses. And it drives me nuts. I usually have dog and cat owners on the MAAP plan. And of course, we love them. They last about 10 or 15 years, and that's super. But our horses and our parrots and our tortoises, as you know, Heike, live a really long time. And so if you don't make a plan for them, then sometimes they end up on an airplane. There's a great book, 2 books actually, by a woman called Janice Lunderville. She's in a group that I belong to called Older Horsewomen, I think it's called. It's on Facebook, and or Aged Horsewomen, Age to Perfection. And her name is Janice, Janis, Lunderville, Nderville. And if you write me, I can put it up there. But she wrote 2 books because she rescued 2 horses. She rescued a black horse that looked like Black Beauty, it was called Sable, beautifully bred horse, who had been gone from her original owner to another owner to another owner, and then she was in a slaughter place. And then she also rescued Charger, who also went from one owner to another owner to another owner, and then slaughter. And it was, what I love about Janice is that she doesn't trace the horse's origins and then shame and blame the person who let the horse go. Rather, she lets them know, listen, I just found Charger, I just found Sable. I'm sure you don't know this, but this is where she is. If you'd like to come and see her, we're working on rehabilitating. And both the people came, lots of tears. In the case of Sable, I believe that a stepfather sold the horse and didn't tell the stepdaughter where he sent it while she was away at college. And then in the other one, Charger was sort of like a barn horse that people leased. And then he was sent to somebody else who was going to keep him, and nobody keeps track, you know, so he ended up, and Janice has rehabilitated both of them, and they'll stay with her for the rest of her life. However, she's made a MAP plan because she now has 3 people who are going to care for the horses if something happens to her or her husband. And now with COVID, she really was so grateful that she met me and I helped her put that together, because she's like, what happens if my husband gets sick? You know, I'm going to have to take care of him, and how am I going to have the horses taken care of? And we do have one barn person, but what if they get sick? So here at, you know, this discussion that we have, and Diane and Sally will bear it out, we always review what it is you need in place in order to make sure your pets are cared for. The MAP plan helps you navigate the journey your pet takes when you can't care for it. So with respect to horses, who to me, I mean, I just lost my horse Art about a month ago. He had an injury to his eye, and when we did surgery, he didn't make it through the anesthesia, so we lost him. And it was very sudden, and we were very upset. But we had a plan in place with 7 redundant places for him to go in the event something happened to myself or Morgan, who was riding him at the time. So with horses and tortoises and parrots, not easy to rehome. Irish setters, Connie, who's at the dentist today, who has a Wheaton, easy to place. Even your rescue dog from Kuwait, much easier to place, I'm sure you would agree, than your horse. Just much easier, unless he has some issues. And so what we talk about here is we make a plan. So this is what in the perfect world, this is what I'd like to happen to my dog, my horse, my tortoise, my parrot. And then what you need to do is you need to honestly address the needs of those pets. So do they need vitamins? Do they need extra shoeing because their feet are bad? Do they need extra food because their teeth are bad and they have to have a certain kind of food? These are all things we take for granted that people are going to know, but it's so much better to just take a minute, well, more than a minute, and write it down. We're doing an hour, the 24th and the 25th, with each of the segments. So we'll go through the M, the make a plan, the A, address the needs of the pet, and then on Saturday we'll do the appoint caregivers and then publish. So at the end of making a plan, you then want to address the needs of the pet, which is really important. Because only you know all those idiosyncrasies. I know Sally talks about it all the time. The thunderstorms are not Athena's favorite thing. And Diane, you have a few that have a few interesting, you know, idiosyncrasies as well, correct? She's on mute. She's talking to me, but she's on mute. I know she can't.
Sorry. Well, I had to let Rigel out, and I didn't want y'all to hear Rigel scratching at the door.
Sure.
Yes, we have. I mean, Rigel's a goat. She eats everything, so somebody certainly would need to know Rigel's a goat, even though she's really an Irish setter.
Right.
You know, and Flame doesn't like other dominant bitches. So yeah, I mean, somebody were to take her into their home with their bitches, it could potentially be a problem.
Right, and it's interesting because Art, my horse, never liked wind coming up from behind him. Who would know that? Well, I knew it. And I told everybody, do not go down a tunnel between a tree and a wall, because the wind coming up behind him, he is going to go into orbit and spin and hold on for dear life. So these are things that you need to share. And then appointing caregivers, there have to be at least 3, and only one can be a family member, because I learned when my husband broke his shoulder, and Connie, if she was here, she learned, her husband had a stroke, that it's not always about us getting sick. It's about our family members getting sick and us being able to then implement the MAP plan so that we can care for our sick family members. We don't ever think of that, because first of all, we're never getting sick, ever. And we'll be able to do it all because we are super women, supermen, not really. So we always want to make sure there's 3. And for the purposes of a will and a pet trust, I always say the 4th group should be a rescue you trust. So if you got your dog, Heike, from a rescue, I would call and ask if you, I would read the contract you might have signed, because you might have to return him. I know that everyone has to return their dog to me if something happens, but they could be the remainderman of the trust if you have a conversation, which nobody ever does, which says, listen, Rescue A, I know I adopted my dog from you, and I have this clause in this contract that says I have to return it to you. Sally lives right next door, and she loves Spot, and Spot loves her. Would it be okay for me to introduce you to her so that if something happens to me, you don't have to take him back, but you can then carry forward with the contract that says, if something happens to Sally, then the dog would come back. So she always has that remainder person. And then if she, runs out of money or doesn't run out of money that you leave in a will or in a pet trust, it goes to the rescue. It always helps. And with horses, it's the same thing, because people say they're going to take care of your horse, and everybody does. Sally and Diane and I know that purebred dog groups come to the aid of their countrymen, and I know from my barn, the barn comes to the aid of anyone. If you get sick, if you hurt yourself, they're going to take care of your horse. However, like this article said, you really need to have something in writing to make sure that the horse isn't then sold without your notice because you're unconscious, or you're away for a few weeks, a month or so, and they don't know where you are and you haven't really talked about it. So if any of you want to check, the link for the Cover Your Tail program, which is July 24th and 25th, is in the chat box. So if you want to take it and share it, if you want to take it and join us, that's great. It has all the information you're going to need to join us. But finally, after you appoint caregivers, and you have to find them and you have to ask them and you have to let them know about each other, because it isn't really just about appointing a caregiver. You need to appoint the 3 and you need to let them know. Because if Sally and Diane and Heike know about each other, and they know Sally's first in line, and Sally says, oh my God, I'm out of town, I can't take care of the animals, then she knows to call Diane or Heike to come in and help. It's always about redundancy and the last letter, which is P, publishing your plan, because everybody has to know there is a plan, everybody has to know their responsibilities in a plan, and everybody has to know that there is someone to help them if they get in over their head. What often happens, don't see the link. Oh yes, she can. She will send it. Absolutely, Diane. And I think she already sent it to you in an email.
Just came up.
Oh, perfect. So the interesting thing that I have found in publishing is that people go to their trust and estate attorneys and make a will, and I've spoken to so many trust and estate attorneys, and poor Diane and Sally will hear this again. I ask them if they have pets, they all raise their hand. I ask them if they have plans for their pet in their will, and they all, well, maybe half of them raise their hand. And I said, how many of you have a pet trust? And none of them raised their hand. And I said, well, first of all, how are you going to advise your client about the value of a pet trust if you don't have one yourself? I know that none of us are going to predecease our animals. That's clearly sure and true for all the animals that have been taken out of apartments in New York, soon to be taken out of houses and homes in Arizona, California, Florida, when people get sick, die, and their families can't take the pets. The SPCA and Animal Care and Control here didn't realize that when all the shelters emptied, when everybody took the animals to shelter in place, that they would be refilled by people who died from COVID and didn't make a plan for their pets. There was nowhere for the animal to go. Some of them had made a plan with their neighbor to spend about 2 weeks taking care of the dog, and getting out of the hospital in 2 weeks with a severe case of COVID is almost non-existent. So they call the animal care and control, and they come and take the dog. And we talked about a few weeks ago a woman who didn't have COVID but who broke her ankle, and her Afghan dog was taken by animal care and control. And animal care and control kept it for 2 weeks. She wasn't back. She didn't call because she was 70. And, I know that I don't necessarily have my phone all the time. Well, that's not true. I do have my phone all the time, but she didn't. And she didn't make a call. She didn't know who to call. But she was told when she got into the ambulance, her dog will be in animal care and control when you get out. Well, it wasn't. Animal care and control had given it to a rescue. Once it was given to the rescue, it belonged to the rescue. The rescue placed it. And now she can't get her 9-year-old Afghan back without litigation, because she didn't know she had to do something to maintain her possession of that dog. The rescue actually told her, well, you're old, and the dog is only 9 and has, a few good years. It's in a young family. It's much happier. It shouldn't have to go home with you, which, of course, I know for Sally and Diane, and probably for you, Heike, that's not an answer you want to hear from the rescue when you find out that they've taken your dog, because you've had it for however many years you've had it and you want it back. But most rescues, and this isn't a condemnation of rescues, but most rescues, when they get a dog from animal care and control, and they keep it for the certain amount of time they need to keep it for it to be reclaimed, and it isn't reclaimed, then own the dog. And they will not tell you where they place the dog. They will not. And most courts won't require them to, which sort of is incredibly stinky. But that's a whole nother lecture that I'll give someday on how to make sure your pets are safe from being reclaimed from rescue. Or claimed by rescue. And so what you want to do is when you go to your T&E person, Heike, you want to make sure you ask them, which most of these trust and estate attorneys don't necessarily do, that you want to make a pet trust and you want to make a will. And the pet trust has to sit outside the will, and it has to be accessible to people if in fact you get sick. And I always tell people, only put like $1,000 in. This isn't like long-term. This is to help the person get the animal, feed the animal, transport the animal, whatever. And you can always refill it, the pet trust. If you get sick, you use up the money, you can always instruct your legal advisor to refill it as needed, to reimburse the person as needed. But this way you know that you have money up front that can be paid immediately. So even if you do die, the pet trust money is available immediately to transport the animal, as opposed to if you leave money in a will, you have to probate, get the money. It's like a nightmare. I had a woman tell me yesterday, and I wish she was here, because she said she was going to come to this program, which is why I focused. Apologies to the dog people here, but this is always good redundancy. She said, well, I'm just going to put all my horses to sleep. And my children know, and my cousin knows, and the vet knows. And I said, okay, is it in writing? She goes, no, they know, and they're really tough, and they're not going to let it happen. And I said, well, I need to tell you it needs to be in writing, because animal advocates will come and stop your horses from being put to sleep, especially if they're not sick, if they're just old. And she goes, well, I wouldn't want to have a run-in with my cousin or my aunt or whatever. And I go, I wouldn't want to have a run-in with your cousin or your aunt either. However, the courts might have a run-in. And if they do something, they may, it might be criminal animal abuse. And then they have that whole thing open up. So you really need to put it in writing if that's what you want to do. And most people, the New York State Bar Association wants me to write a whole article on how to stop people from putting that in their will to put their dogs to sleep if they die before their dogs. And I said, well, first of all, you need to have them speak to someone and really help them hold a safe place for that decision. Because especially with horses, it's hard to place them. And maybe if they're 30 and healthy, but 30, I would never put Art down unless I absolutely could not find some place that I could keep an eye on him if I needed to place him. But people don't necessarily think that that place is ever available. I had a woman who told me with her Cavalier King Charles that if she If they outlived her, they were to be put to sleep. It was in her will, and put, and cremated and whatever. And I said, that's, that is an absolute understandable way to go about this. And if there's someone who you might know who might really appreciate getting older cavaliers who are okay, and you're leaving money for their care, that might be an option you consider. And she said, nobody would take care of them the way I do. And that's a conversation I've had with several of my MAP clients. And I'd say 50% of the time, I respect their wishes, absolutely. And 50% of the time after we have the conversation, they go, well, maybe I could do this, or maybe I could do that, because I introduce them to rescues that I work with that have follow-up. Because my biggest fear with everyone who rescues horses from slaughter pens, is that they don't then follow through with where the horse goes. So the horse goes in and out of slaughter pens. So you really need to have a plan in place. And finally, the P is to publish. So you publish it with your attorney, you publish it with your veterinarian, because your veterinarian has to know that Sally and Diane and Deborah can bring your animals to the vet to be treated. And you know that, Heike, because there's that need to have permission to treat the pet from the perceived owner. And if you're over, I'd say if you're over 60, 65, you need to make your pet trust irrevocable. And why do you want to do that? Well, because Medicaid will clot back into your estate if you die. If it is a trust that is not irrevocable, they will clot back into your estate to take care of you if you're just sick. And I always talk about the 60s. I hope I remember them. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. So it's death, divorce, disability, disease, delay, dementia that come to pass, and only one of them means you're dead. So that's when the will kicks in, and that's when everything else kicks in. But if you're not dead yet, you really need to make a plan to care for your pet short-term or possibly long-term. If you're suffering from dementia, it's going to have to be long-term. And if you can, I always say that people do so much better if they can have their pets in their lives for as long as possible. If you watch any cancer commercial, the people who are trying Neulasta come home and are petting their dogs. So we know they do such a great job at making or helping us recover. So that's the plan in a nutshell. Make a plan, address the needs of your pet, appoint caregivers, and publish your plan. If you don't, then if you don't do the P, publish, it doesn't matter what you do, because if the people don't know who everyone is, it doesn't come to fruition. And I've shared this with everyone before, but I had a client who came to one of my big MAP plans in California. There were about 50 people in the audience. We did it over 3 days of a weekend because there were so many people. And she put it in the drawer, and she didn't tell her husband, who was the executor of her will. I guess she told the co-owners where it was. He didn't know, and he gave the dogs to someone who placed the dogs and told the co-owners, too bad, I'm not telling you where they are. You'll have to sue the executor, who will then have to sue me, and that'll be really expensive, and just rest assured they're in a good home. And what are you going to do? I mean, it's very expensive. So that's why this plan I've created. And the other piece about this plan that I love is that it's outside your will, and it's outside the pet trust. It's by reference in the pet trust and in your will. So that when you get a new horse, Heike, or you get a new dog, Sally, or Diane, you want a new dog like you want a hole in your head. So that's probably not going to happen, because you already, I think, have 3. I have 2. But when you're getting something new or something passes away, you can update the MAP plan. And how you refer to it in your will and your pet trust is, my pets are to be dispersed according to the plans of the most recent MAP plan. And then, of course, you have to publish that most recent MAP plan with the attorney and the veterinarian and the people who are your caregivers. And I always say, check every year with your caregivers. People move from pet-friendly buildings to pet unfriendly buildings, and forget to tell you that they were going to take your dog or your cat. So now is the time, Heike, that we all ask questions or talk about something that happened to us today or this week, between weeks. So why don't we start with you, because you're new, if you have any questions, and then we'll go to Diane, and then we'll go to Sally.
So I think you just answered it, but how often do you update your MAP plan?
I do it every year. I usually ping my clients every year to make sure that they check in with their caregivers, check in that their veterinarian has updated, has the information at hand, as well as their attorney.
So which portion of the legal team do you fall into?
I fall into helping the trusted estate attorney write the pet trust and write the clauses in the will. The amount of money that's left to an animal is not as significant as it needs to be. Usually we can work out how much the pet will require. The pet trust is simply the money. If it's in an irrevocable pet trust, you don't want to put too much money in there because you don't want to, like if all your pets pass away and you don't get another one, well, if $10,000 is in there, you'll be like, oh God. But then some rescue, that is the remainderment on your pet trust, will get it, and that'll be beautiful. But in your will, you can leave a significant amount of money to the pets, or then to the rescue. You really have to make sure, though, that it's not the most long-lived black dog ever to walk the face of the earth, or the shortest-lived black dog. So the chip has to be there, and you have to update it.
Okay. So do you learn about how to write the map and everything that goes with it in your program?
Yes, we're going to go through each letter. We're going to talk about what you need to put in, what kind of, because we have to reality check. As the woman who's going to kill her horses when she dies, and my friend who's, was going to kill her dogs who happily passed away before, you have to reality check on whether or not that's the best thing, and it could be, what your options could be. So we talk about it for, an hour for each letter, and really take a lot of questions and answers. And what I find when I hold these programs is that people have incredibly interesting questions that I have never heard before, and usually expand my program greatly. Like a woman who told me, I don't need a MAP plan. My daughter will take care of my pets for me. And then she called me during a program she was attending with me, and she said, I'm going to make one of these plans. She wasn't attending it. She actually signed up late. She said, because I want my daughter to know that if she can't take my pets, that these are the 3 people that I'd like to have my pets if she can't care for them. So it relieves that guilt that some people feel. I'm sure you know a number of people, Heike, that say, well, I had to take my grandmother's cat or my aunt's dog because nobody else would take it. Now I have this dog, and blah, blah, blah. And sometimes it works out beautifully, and sometimes it doesn't. And I had a case where a family kept assuring their mother that one of them would keep the dog. And when she died, they dropped it off at a high kill shelter, and it didn't die because some older couple came in and adopted it because it was a little white poodle, very adoptable. And those people got $5,000 out of her will because the attorney was smart enough to say to the kids, why don't you go back to this shelter and get me a death certificate to make sure this dog is dead? And when they found out that the dog went to Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Mr. and Mrs. Smith had a $5,000 windfall, which the guy had called me to mediate a settlement because they didn't take the dog thinking that they'd get this windfall, and so they shouldn't get the windfall. And I declined to take it as a mediation. I said, well, your mother provided. She had those people walk in to get that dog because you promised to take care of the dog. So I cannot be neutral because I think it was really stinky what you did. But that's my own bias in the situation. If you're going to say you're going to take care of a dog, then take care of the dog. So that's my bias. But that's what you want to do. So that's what the program does. It really talks about things and people's worries and fears. And I can tell you that most people who come to it say, holy Toledo, I never thought of that. I never thought about driving in the car. And we talk about it because most of the things that are new to me come to this group. Driving in the car, having an accident, being hauled away in the ambulance, what happens to your dogs? Well, they go to animal care and control. And unless you have directives with your dogs or your horse on who's to call to get the horse may not, or the dogs may not find their way home. So it's a very important step to take.
So I know that I won't be able to make this one because I'm in clinics that weekend. How often do you have
Well, I'm going to do them every 3 months. So we'll have one in July, and then we'll probably have one in October, maybe by the end of the year or at the beginning of the year. So there'll be at least 3 before uh, January, the end of January, because we probably will go through COVID again, and I hope not. But if we do, people will really need to make sure their pets are cared for, because their pets are now helping them get through COVID. The least they can do is make a plan to make sure the pets make it.
Right.
So I'll let you know, absolutely. And I'll send you the link anyway if you have anyone in your practice who wants to make the plan, or any of your clients. I love to give little vignettes to veterinarian practices so that they are not having the dog dropped off with them, with no plan. Here, Mrs. Smith died. You're her vet. Find a new home. I mean, what do you do?
Yeah, I would like to connect you with several vet clinics actually, and at least my barn. My barn is actually this one that I'm at now has grown a lot. There are a ton of boarders, and I think they would really appreciate to know this.
And
So
it protects the barn owner, because the barn owner and the kennel owner, and the groomer are the people who people call to take their pets. Well, you can't take all of them, and you can't, what do you do next? So it really is a great education on what to do next as the barn owner, because you can be one of the people who takes care of the pet, but if you need help, knowing that Sally and Diane are there makes it a lot easier. So I'm happy to just shoot me an email, and I'll send you all the information. That'd be great. I also do these half hour. Well, now we're pushing on almost 40 minutes, but I can do these for the barn as well, so they understand why it is important. So if they want to set up a Zoom and they can get on my schedule, I'm happy to hold one.
okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, Diane. So how are you been doing? What's up new? Anything?
Actually, yeah. First, I have where you are. I love that wall behind you, and that's not where you usually are. Where are you?
I'm home. It's just one of those Zoom things that they're making them better now, so that you don't have so much delay in your hands and stuff. So I'm in my office, but I have what's called a Zoom background. And Sally was right. She called it a floor. You're laying on the floor, and I said, yes, I do look like I'm laying on the floor. But it's much better than the other one, I thought. So here I am.
I love it. Looks like but then again, that's Sally. Your floor.
Yep.
Your wall.
My wall's a mess. I'm in my husband's office.
Yeah, that's why I stopped, Sally, because it was getting too hard to keep it not a mess. So
anyway, I had a wonderful thing happen this week. I think I told you guys back in May that one of my puppy buyers, who had 2 puppies from my last litter, suddenly lost the boy, and we're all just devastated. And they were just devastated. And I looked high for a puppy, and of course with COVID, there was nothing local, drivable, etc. And 2 days ago, I got a call from my very dear friend Russ in Utah saying that the puppies in his litter that was born in May, unfortunately, was going to a show home but had an underbite. Were these people still looking for a puppy? And they had told me they just were going to wait till my next litter next year. But I called them and I put the two of them together, and they are going to be driving in their motorhome to Utah to pick up this baby boy. And I don't know who's more excited, Russ or them, because it's like match made in heaven. I mean, Russ asked me like about these people. I'm like, they could adopt me, okay? I want to come back as their Irish Setter. So please let them have a puppy if you've got one. And they bonded really well. And she was texting me last night already trying to find correct names for his litter theme. And with everything that's been going on,
it was
really
a happy
cool.
moment. It was a happy
moment, and it's actually in a position for it to be. And right, Utah doesn't have a queen, so it just worked. And so I was really happy to see that.
Yeah.
Everything else, and Spider is healed.
Yay!
The spider bite is healed.
That's so great.
More bandage. and Tim is back playing with everybody else. So those are two really good things this week.
Oh, I'm so glad you shared. I'm so glad you shared. And it's funny because I have two prior owners who just got puppies from other people. And I don't know who was happier, me or them, because I knew the puppy had a great home. I knew the breeder would get a great couple to love their dog. I was a little disappointed that one of my puppies wouldn't be a repeat. But you know, it is hard to make them wait until you have a litter. I mean, because who knows? There's many a slip between the cup and the lip. And so I was really thrilled the two of them got new puppies and are enjoying every minute with them. So that's really great. Hey, Sally, anything new good happened to you? I love
No,
those daisies you keep sending me.
thank you. Yes, I read that my dog's name is Athena, and Athena is the goddess of wisdom. And now every morning there's a barred owl that watches us, and its head can pivot 270 degrees, and it watches us from one side of the park to the other. And Athena is the only dog that the wise owl doesn't attack and dive bomb. So I figure because she's the goddess of wisdom
That's right.
and
He
wise
knows.
old owl, yeah,
He
smart.
knows. He knows.
You
Well,
know,
I know that we are all doing well. Diane and Sally, did you get the email with the link in it yesterday or no?
I did not.
Okay.
And I will have to go back and look
No
because
worries.
I was on the phone having stupid conversations with prospective employers.
Yeah, no worries. I want to respect that we're almost 15 minutes over. Thank you, Heike, for coming and sharing your information with us and asking questions that, of course, I know Diane and Sally always feel like people who come really bring so much to the table. I thank both of you for coming again. And until next Wednesday, make sure you keep your dogs safe.
Bye, Sally and Heike. I wish you were closer.
That's right.
Everybody,
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
thank you very much.